Okay, so this is part 2 of me rebuilding my mini ITX desktop. So I'm just gonna clean up my desktop, uh, remove the parts that I won't be using anymore, remove some of the cables and clean it. But before I go to that, I'll just discuss about this current setup. This is again a mini ITX desktop. As you can see, the motherboard is still in there. It's this part here, and you can see the dimensions of how small it is. You know, so I put this is a mug of mine. So you can see the dimensions here. So it's actually pretty small. Not that small like the uh, some of the desktops built by Dell and Lenovo, like the Optiplexes, because they have custom components, especially the boards. But this is one of the smallest builds you can get with off-the-shelf components. You Again, this is what you call the casing. Now, typically, this is also what you call nowadays. This is what you call as the system unit. Before, when we started way back when, they called this a CPU. You have the monitor, you have the cable, the keyboards and the mouse, and then they call this part the CPU. You know, but nowadays you might get confused because they also call the processor the main brain of the computer that is placed into the motherboard. It's also called CPU, but uh, just to uh, keep things from getting confusing, we call it the processor. So this is the actual CPU or the system unit. So this is the fractal design node 304. I bought this because, as I mentioned before, I wanted to build a mini ITX machine because it's small. You know, if there was a chance that I needed to uh, go away from home for a few weeks or months, this is small enough for me to be able to bring it with me. Why would I bring it? Aside from being a desktop that I can use for my office work, I actually started uh, using this simply for media as a media server. You know, Back then, I really stopped using desktops for a lot of stuff, especially during the internet. When the smartphones came around, we were able to start, surfing the net using just our phones. And then when the tablets came out, like the iPad, it gave you a different experience consuming the internet. You know, you hold on to it. You can lie on your bed or on your couch and just hold on to it, which you couldn't do with a desktop. With a desktop, you always have to sit in front of a monitor, connected, of course, to the CPU, so you'll be able to do stuff. You know, so over the years, if you've read some articles online, they always said that it looks like the desktop is going away because it's being replaced by a lot of the new devices. People are tending to drift towards laptop just to do work in office because laptops nowadays have become powerful enough that you can do several jobs on it, and for checking our internet, checking our emails, smartphone has really replaced that. And the tablet now is actually again change the landscape, because we just use it to be able to read content, like ebooks, even comic books. Is actually one of the reasons why I bought my first iPad, uh, because I wanted to be able to read digital comics comfortably wherever, and I can bring it wherever with me. I don't have to bring my physical comic books. So the desktop actually fell by the wayside. Again, but then one of the reasons, the main reason actually of me still keeping a desktop was back then there wasn't any streaming videos except for YouTube. So YouTube is for original content creators, everyday Joes like us, and then of course they've become professional. You know, people are doing, or companies are doing uh, commercial grade quality videos there, but they weren't really offering any of the movies or shows that you really want to see, and the ones that you go to the theaters. And the option for you to be able to watch those is to buy the DVDs or the Blu-rays. But one of the other, of course, option was just to download videos of the net. But those things take up space a lot. Typical movies back then, DVD size around 700 megabytes per movie. But those are just regular sized. The 720p or the 1080p movies, or movies in those sizes, they take up space. For 1080p movies, it should take about 4 gigabytes. So that means for someone like me, I would need to have several or large capacity of space. So I was building a media server, and I was looking for, and I was still going with the Mini ITX. So I had to look for a casing that would fit as much hard drive as my motherboard could support. So I found the motherboards back then. There were motherboards, which is again this component, which everything attaches to. The most I think I saw was about one with that could support 6 drives, and so I had to look for a casing that would at least have 6 drive capacity as well. So this is the one that I got. This is again the Fractal Design Node 304. This was, I think, released back in 2012. That was already a couple of years into my ITX phase. I built computers, Mini ITX, with different builds back then, different casings. But this was my last Mini ITX build, again around 2012. And I like the design because basically it's very classy. It's classic actually. It doesn't grow old. It doesn't look dated even after a few years. It's already 2021, and although I don't have the cover to this casing, if you look at the front, it still looks nice. It's very clean. It's very minimal. And it had the storage capacity that I was looking for. So this actually can support 6 drives, which is why I got it. So this is the drive base for the 304. I still have my hard drives here. I actually have 6 hard drives, but I disconnected them here. I removed them. I forgot where to place them, but they're still here. So each of these goes here. you know. So that's, you can, each cage like this hosts around 2 drives. So there's actually 3. So I'm gonna put it here. You know, and the design is very nice because as you can see, it's really compact. Although there's really barely enough space in there. It's really nice because it made the most out of your of this small space. I was again thinking of getting a newer case here, but even the micro ATX sized casings right now, or even the full towers, do not have support for more than 4 drives. It's really crazy because if you go out and look at them, they actually have enough space to actually still put in around 8, even 10 drives, but they don't uh, put drive cages in there anymore. They only place around capacity for around 2 regular platter drives, and and they allow a lot of the space to remain unoccupied. They are going for the aesthetics by removing the drives in there and just leaving a lot of space there unoccupied, and they're really wasting space. I would have gotten one of those again, but I couldn't find any adapters or cages for additional drives. So I just opted to, like I said, just build again a mini ITX. I still have my old casing, my old PSU, and the only part that here isn't working is actually a motherboard. So I'm gonna remove that. So I'm gonna take this off. You know, so these are the hard drives, desktop ones. When you go look for them, they're the 3.5 inches drives. So you can see, these have the modern power connectors, not the old ones with the 4 pins. And then this is the power connector, and this is the SATA connector to the motherboard. These are hard drives. They're made of spinning platters on the inside, so they're made of mechanical parts. They do tend to break down after a few years because of continuous grinding or spinning of the drives. But they're still cheaper than the current uh, drives that are called the SSD. They're made of solid state drives, or they're made of chips, computer chips, ICs. So that's why they call it solid state. So again, I'm gonna clean this up. I'm gonna remove it. But again, you know, so aside from the storage drive, you can see that the PSU is actually placed here. The placing is quite good, I guess, because the PSU, you know the unventilated part is over here, so it doesn't really emit or exhaust any hot air towards the motherboard. Your connectors are off onto one side. On the other side, this is where the ventilation is, so it will blow out the hot air from the PSU to this side, away from the motherboard. So the PSU is the main power supply unit of your desktop, and every desktop will actually have it. If you buy a casing, they sometimes, or nowadays, most of the days, they don't come with a PSU. But before, around the early 90s, they were ubiquitous with the purchase. They come with the casing already. But nowadays, the PSU has become its own major component, and you buy them separate. You actually have you really actually need to try to learn about the power consumption of your planned unit before you buy the PSU. Otherwise, it might come in short. But this is a 620. It's enough to power small micro ITX computer, so I'm gonna keep it. I'm gonna discuss about this one next time. So, and then here you can see that the placing of the fans, you have two fans here at front, which is actually an intake. The top here is made of, metal. It has holes in it, so it will pull hot air in, and I think there's also a vent from the bottom, so it will pull pull air in and blow it here, which will pass the hard drives. And then you have the exhaust fan here. So what will happen is that it, it will pull air in here, push it towards the through the drives and then to the back, and then the fan here would uh, force everything out, all the hot air. So again, then there's the motherboard at the bottom, so the hot air rises and everything gets blown outside. So the reason I don't have the casing is that, or the cover, is actually I use this without the cover because the cover itself only has ventilations on the sides, doesn't have anything at the top, which should help uh, with the ventilation, because all you know that hot air always rises. So it would have been nice. I've always planned to mod it and add some ventilation, but I never got around to it. So again, I'm gonna clean this up and be back with a video with it being removed.